There were easier ways to die than crawling through the ribcage of a derelict starship, but Eli Trask never liked doing things the easy way. His boots crunched over bones and busted coolant lines. His scanner beeped like a caffeinated cricket, and the smell, oh, the smell, could only be described as sentient mildew flirting with burnt plastic, which ironically was also the name of his ex-girlfriend's perfume. He was 3 decks below the main salvage lanes, crawling through what the manifest called Containment Auxiliary Sublevel E, and what any sane person would call absolutely cursed. But the Argon Warden was filled with forgotten tech and unpaid promises, and Eli was one rent payment away from selling his kidneys to the gig economy. Again, he was hoping for some intact power cores, maybe a rare mineral node. What he found was a door, an intact door. That was suspicious. Nothing on this ship was intact, not even the vending machines. They'd all developed abandonment issues and refused to vend. But this door was humming, faintly glowing, sealed like it had something to hide. So naturally, he poked it. It didn't open. He poked harder. It still didn't open. He sighed, yanked out a mini plasma cutter, and gave it the old Trask treatment, which involved mild violence, excessive swearing, and an offer to trade his spleen if the thing would just cooperate. Finally, the seal hissed, the door groaned, and a pocket of cold, dry air hit him in the face like a disapproving parent. Inside it was dim, quiet, and at the center of the room, suspended in what looked like a tangle of ancient biotech chains, was her. Eli blinked. She wasn't what he expected. He'd seen aliens before. Too many limbs, gooey eyes, some with spores that filed for diplomatic immunity. But she looked almost human. Too human. Skin pale like starlight, hair in a braid that had probably been fashionable 400 years ago, and ears, long, delicate, and pointed, like someone had genetically crossbred an elf with a mood swing. She wasn't unconscious. She was just watching him, like a statue debating whether or not to blink. Then she spoke. "If you free me," she said, "anything you want is yours." Eli stared. "Okay," he said slowly. "I have follow-up questions." Her head tilted. "You're not the usual kind." "I get that a lot, usually right before being thrown out of bars." He stepped closer, cautious. The chains weren't metal, not exactly. They shimmered like glass and coiled like snakes. They weren't holding her with force, he realized. They were holding her with fear, some kind of ancient lock system, biotech, no visible interface. "I'm guessing you're not a janitor," he said. "No." "Or a performance artist." She blinked. "No." "Good, because I was about to critique your lighting." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. That was when Eli noticed her eyes. Violet, yes, but deep. Not just deep, tired. The kind of tired you didn't get from bad sleep, but from carrying something heavy for too long. Maybe centuries. He scratched his neck. "I'm Eli. Era. Nice to meet you, Era. Listen, this whole on anything you want deal, do you have a menu or—" She gave him a look, the kind that suggested she'd once melted a man's nervous system just by raising her eyebrows. "Right. Maybe jokes were a bad idea." "I'm serious," he said. "Why are you chained? What is this place?" She looked down at the coils around her wrists, the bindings at her ankles. "This was a prison. I was the key and the lock. They built this place to hold me. Then they forgot. Time passed. I stayed." Eli crossed his arms. "And now I show up, like some idiot scavenger hero, and the plot begins? That's a very cynical way to look at it." "I try. It keeps me from crying." Era exhaled, and something in the chains pulsed. Eli squinted. "Wait. If you can control the lock, why haven't you already escaped?" "I could, but not alone. There's a failsafe. If I break it myself, the room vaporizes, along with me. That's a very effective prison system." "Yes, and very dramatic." He knelt beside one of the anchor points. The tech was old, organic code, grew itself into the walls. This wasn't something he could hack with a screwdriver and a prayer. He'd need to improvise, which meant doing the thing he did best, make it up as he went. "I don't suppose you can bribe the chains," he said. "They do not take tips." Figures. He unclipped a canister from his belt. Nanoflux acid, highly illegal, very effective. He wasn't sure it would dissolve biotech restraints, but it would definitely void his warranty. "Before I do this," he said, pausing, "I need to know. Are you going to kill me once you're free?" She looked at him, offended. "Of course not." "Okay, but like, definitely not?" "Definitely." "Cool." He poured the acid. The first chain hissed, then peeled away like melting paper. The second dissolved more slowly, releasing a tremor through the floor. Era didn't move. Her breath was shallow, her eyes locked on his. The third chain screamed. It sounded like it was afraid. Eli flinched. "You're sure this is safe?" he asked. "No." "Awesome." The last bond cracked. Era slumped forward but caught herself. Her feet touched the floor like she hadn't in 100 years. And then the ceiling lights flickered red. A cold, mechanical voice filled the chamber. "Containment breach detected. Reinitializing lockdown protocol. Target 001-A." Era winced. They woke up. "Who's they?" Eli asked. A grinding noise shook the corridor outside. Heavy, angry, something ancient remembering its job. Era looked at him with calm urgency. "Run now, explain later." He grabbed her hand and sprinted, boots thundering through the hallway as behind them, the security system of a forgotten prison began to wake up. As they ran, Eli couldn't help but shout, "Still waiting on that anything you want part." She didn't miss a beat. "I haven't forgotten," she said. Somewhere behind them, something exploded. "Great!" Eli yelled. "Let's survive the next 10 minutes and maybe start with a sandwich." They found relative safety behind a jammed bulkhead door that only opened after Eli kicked it, cursed it, apologized to it, and then kicked it again out of spite. The corridor beyond was dark, lined with decomposed signage and what might have once been motivational posters. One featured a grinning blue alien with the caption, "Compliance is contagious." Eli leaned against the wall, panting. "Okay," he said between breaths. 10 out of 10 for the escape. 2 out of 10 for the hospitality. Era stood beside him, eyes alert, body still too graceful for someone who'd just been unchained from a centuries-old prison. "The ship's defense grid is active," she said. "The central AI has recognized my release. It will pursue." "Well, that's just unfair. You'd think after a couple hundred years it would have gotten bored." "It does not get bored. It catalogs, analyzes, destroys." Eli gave her a flat look. "So it's like my last landlord." A siren blared somewhere above them, muffled by layers of debris and metal, but definitely drawing closer. "Come on," he muttered, pulling a rusted map interface from the wall. It blinked once, then short-circuited and died. "Figures." Era placed her palm gently over the dead interface. A faint violet shimmer passed from her fingers into the console. It blinked to life, stuttered, then began streaming a real-time schematic of the ship. She didn't look surprised. Eli, however, stared. "Okay, that was cool. Slightly terrifying, but cool. I am bonded to the ship's infrastructure, or was. Some of the code still remembers me." "Right, and I thought I had commitment issues." They followed the schematic toward the environmental core. If the security AI was in purge mode, the safest place would be the center of the ship, where emergency overrides could be triggered, assuming, of course, they weren't turned into paste by the defense bots along the way. "So," Eli asked as they stepped over a collapsed pipe, "you're what? A princess? A super weapon? A really lonely chatbot?" Era didn't answer immediately. "I was part of a peace initiative, a bridge between species. They engineered me to understand others too well." "Ah, classic empathy curse. Something like that. And your jailers thought what? That if they locked you up, the war would solve itself? They thought if I couldn't be used, I wouldn't be dangerous." Eli snorted. "That sounds exactly like something an overpaid think tank would come up with." She glanced at him. "You're handling this well. I once got stranded on a moon where the local fauna tried to marry me. This is actually pretty tame." They ducked into a maintenance crawl space. Eli swore as a spider drone the size of a toaster skittered by, chittering angrily. He tossed a broken servo at it. The drone squeaked and scampered away. Era raised an eyebrow. "You're very brave. Please, that thing was this close to charging me rent." They dropped into a lower level, landing on a conveyor belt that coughed to life beneath them. Boxes of ancient supplies rolled by. Freeze-dried rations, discarded uniforms, something labeled emotional support jellies. Do not shake. Eli peered inside a crate. Okay, but seriously, what kind of support are we talking about here? Like motivational slime, or... Era suddenly grabbed his arm. Down! A laser turret popped from the ceiling like a very rude jack-in-the-box and fired, searing the air above their heads. They hit the belt hard, sliding between two crates just before the system locked onto them again. "Remind me," Eli grunted, "why ships designed for diplomacy need automated murder furniture." They didn't. This was added later. "Oh, good. That's much better." Era gestured toward a junction ahead. "We can divert power. Shut down the weapons. Can we also order room service while we're at it?" They scrambled off the conveyor and into the control room. It was intact mostly, except for the scorch marks, dangling wires, and a console that appeared to be slowly growing moss. Eli slapped it. The interface buzzed, resisted, then flickered to life. "Hello, user. You have not interacted with central processing in 140.6 years. Would you like a tutorial?" "No," Eli muttered. "Would you like to subscribe to..." "No." He looked at Era. "You mind doing the sparkle hands thing again?" She stepped forward and placed her palm on the console. This time the ship shuddered. Lights rippled down the hallway. Somewhere in the distance the turret groaned, sparked, and powered down. Era stumbled slightly. Eli caught her. "Hey, whoa, you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just draining. You should pace yourself. I don't know what kind of warranty you came with, but I doubt you're still under it." She smiled faintly. "You keep joking. It's a defense mechanism. If I stop, I'll probably start crying. Or worse, singing." They moved through quieter corridors now. The immediate danger had passed. For the moment. Era paused in front of a shattered viewport. The stars beyond glowed like frozen time. "It's strange. I haven't seen this sky in centuries." Eli joined her. "Funny. I spend half my life staring at stars and still don't understand a damn thing. That's the beauty of them." "What?" "Their stubborn unknowability. Their persistence." He looked at her, suddenly aware of the space between them. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was recognition. The kind you feel when someone else laughs at the same part of the tragedy you thought only you understood. Then the lights flickered. Eli sighed. "We had maybe 12 seconds of peace. That's a new record." Era tensed. "The ARI's deploying sentries." "Of course it is." They turned a corner and came face to face with a 7-foot mech, painted in cheerful corporate colors and armed to the teeth. "Unauthorized personnel detected," it announced. "Please remain still while you are neutralized." Eli raised a finger. "Can I just say that's a terrible customer service voice?" Then he ducked. The chapter ended in the only way Eli knew how, with explosions, improvised plans, and an unshakable feeling that he'd just made the worst brilliant decision of his life. Eli had never fought a sentry mech before. Not up close anyway. He'd stolen power cores from them, sure. Once even spray-painted a mustache on one during a drunken dare. But that had been in a scrapyard where the worst consequence was tetanus, not instant laser-based disassembly. The mech lunged. Eli grabbed Era's arm and dove into a side corridor, narrowly avoiding a blast that turned the wall behind them into molten regret. The floor buckled beneath their feet, and an alarm wailed in a pitch specifically engineered to make you feel like your mistakes were being judged by a choir of disappointed ants. "Plan?" Era shouted. "I was really hoping you had one." The mech followed, its cheerful pastel chassis clashing disturbingly with the rack-mounted plasma cannon unfolding from its shoulder. Its voice chirped, "Please remain calm while I liquefy your insides for compliance." Eli ducked into another hall. "They seriously need to fire whoever designed that AI's personality." "They did," Era said. "It fired back." They skidded into a ventilation bay, slamming the door shut behind them. Eli jammed a broken panel into the locking mechanism for good measure. It wouldn't stop the mech long, but it might buy them a few seconds to hyperventilate in peace. Era leaned against the wall, hands on her knees. You're bleeding. I'm always bleeding. It's how I mark territory. You are strange. And you're just now noticing? She reached out and with a gentle press of her fingers, stopped the flow from a cut on his arm. The warmth in her touch wasn't just physical. It pulsed, like a signal, brushing the edge of his nervous system. He stared at her. What was that? Just a patch. Temporary. Right. Alien Band-Aid. Cool. They both sat on the floor. Overhead, the ceiling panels buzzed with the sound of passing drones. Eli broke the silence. So this AI, how sentient are we talking? It was designed to evolve, observe, interpret, defend. Over centuries, it redefined threat to include possibilities. Well, that's just poetic and terrifying. It believes I represent an instability, a disruption. I mean, you did kind of wake up and break its ancient lock system. I was the lock system. Eli blinked. Wait, what? She didn't elaborate, just looked away. The air between them vibrated faintly, like static from a memory trying to load. He stood pacing. Okay, so let's review. You're an empathic biointerface. The AI thinks you're a contagion. We're stuck on a haunted murder ship, and I haven't had a decent meal since breakfast. Breakfast was 4 hours ago. Yes, but I ate something called cheese product bar, and I'm not convinced it wasn't a building material. She smiled again, small but real. They slipped through an auxiliary maintenance hatch, crawling through ducts that smelled like burned circuits and cafeteria disappointment. At one point, they passed a sleeping repair bot holding what looked suspiciously like a teddy bear made from bolts. Eli whispered, "Don't wake it. I heard they imprint on the first thing they see. I don't want to be a father right now." Eventually, they dropped into a disused data archive chamber. Rows of crystalline servers blinked like frozen constellations. Era touched a terminal, and the lights stabilized. "This area is off-grid," she said. "We can rest." Eli plopped onto a crate. "Fantastic. Let's have a picnic next to the Library of Forbidden Space Memories." Era sat beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Then she said, "When I was created, they called me a peace seed. I was meant to carry resonance patterns between species, emotional bridges. I was not supposed to choose. Choose. Emotions, bonds, identity. They feared contamination, but it happened anyway. I began to care about individuals, about differences. I stopped being a tool and became a person. That's when they locked me away." Eli exhaled. "That's the problem with empathy. It makes you inconvenient." Era turned to him. "You freed me without asking what you get. Maybe I like doing dumb things. Maybe you don't." He didn't respond, not with words. The console in front of them pinged. A message unfurled from the data core, an ancient command line from centuries ago. Containment log, visual record. A hologram shimmered above them, a council of 7 species, arguing in overlapping languages. In the center, younger Era, radiant and composed, stood silent as accusations swirled around her. She intervened. She altered the ambassador's decision. She made them feel too much. Another voice. She saved lives. She manipulated. She empathized. She disobeyed her purpose. She became more than it. And then the verdict. Chain her. Bury the key. Let silence guard what trust could not. The recording ended. Era looked away. Eli muttered, "Well, that was cheerful. Got anything in here that isn't a betrayal?" He started rummaging through the storage crates, tossing aside obsolete cables and ancient ration packs. At the bottom of one, he found a small silver cube labeled Empathic Field Calibrator. Do not ingest. He held it up. "I don't know what this does, but I'm 80% sure it's either a communication enhancer or a very aggressive mint." Era studied it. "It's a resonance booster. It amplifies connection frequencies between linked minds." Eli turned it over in his hand. "And what happens if we use it? We would be attuned, more than before." I would see through you. You through me. Sounds messy. Sounds honest. He hesitated. And the AI? It would see us as one breach, not two. Stronger together, but more visible. Eli looked at her. So we do this and double our chances of getting caught. Yes, he smirked. That's starting to sound like a plan. They activated the cube, and just like that, the line between me and you thinned. Not erased, not blurred, just softened. He felt her pulse through his fingers. She felt his doubt, his dry humor wrapped around a tired core. Neither of them looked away, and then every light in the archive turned red. The AI had found them. The lights pulsed red like a heartbeat that had discovered caffeine. Eli stood slowly, the silver cube still warm in his hand. Era's breath matched his in rhythm now, synchronized not by chance, but by the resonance between their minds. He could feel her emotions like radio signals on the edge of his thoughts. Urgency, steadiness, and deep beneath, guilt. Heavy, bitter guilt. The kind that came with knowing you'd been used as a tool and blamed for rusting. So, Eli said, keeping his voice level as automated lockdown bolts echoed in the distance. We're now psychically bonded, and the AI thinks we're a glitch in the matrix. Can I file for emotional hazard pay? Era didn't smile, but her thoughts flickered against his mind with a small pulse of dry amusement. You chose this. I also once chose to eat shrimp from a gas station vending machine. My judgment isn't flawless. They ducked into a narrow service conduit just before the archive doors burst open and two sentry drones glided in, scanning with retinal beams and what Eli could only describe as every accusatory body language. Crawling through the duct felt like moving through a discarded intestine. Coiled wires, dust like interstellar dandruff, and that faint, ever-present hum of tech whispering to itself. You okay? Eli asked, more from instinct than necessity. He could already feel her heartbeat stabilizing. Still, asking felt human. Yes, she answered aloud anyway. But the AI is adapting. It's rerouting itself around our signals. It's learning how we think. Well, that's rude. It was designed to neutralize unknown variables. We've become unknown. They dropped into an old gravity stabilization bay. The artificial gravity was partially malfunctioning, which meant every few seconds their feet would decide whether or not to stay loyal. Eli nearly floated into the ceiling twice before deciding walking was overrated. We need to reach the main systems core, Era said, bracing herself against a wall as the floor wobbled under them like a drunk trampoline. That's where the AI's logic seat is housed. You mean its brain? Yes, technically a distributed quantum cognition node. I'm just going to keep calling it the brain. Fine. Eli caught himself on a rail as the gravity hiccuped again. So what's the plan? Sweet-talk the AI into having an existential crisis? Era tilted her head thoughtfully. Not exactly, but if we can sync its empathy inhibitors with our resonance pattern. Wait, hold on. This sounds suspiciously like emotional sabotage. It is, he grinned. Well, that's my specialty. The corridors beyond the bay had been warped by years of neglect and invasive growth. Biotech vines had spread through cracks in the walls, pulsing faintly with the ship's nervous system. Era paused to run her fingers along one, closing her eyes. Eli felt the echo of data running through her mind. Coordinates, protocols, memories that weren't hers but felt like fingerprints left in code. This way, she said, turning down a dark passage. There's an old neurosync tunnel. We can shortcut to the core. Are we still calling it a shortcut if it's full of brain fungus? Would you prefer the hallway with the rotating buzzsaws? Touche. The neurosync tunnel looked like a spinal cord carved into metal. Pulsing nodes blinked above them, and a low hum of thought passed through the floor like something dreaming in its sleep. As they walked, memories, not just Era's, but some of Eli's own, drifted in the air around them, replayed in soft light. Eli saw his 8th birthday, alone, scavenging a broken drone for spare parts, while nearby kids played with actual toys. He heard his mother's voice, sharp, tired, practical. He saw Era's first moment of awareness in a sterile chamber, surrounded by scientists who spoke about her as if she were a button waiting to be pressed. You feel that? He asked, voice quieter now. Yes. It's weird. It's us. He didn't reply. There wasn't much to say. It was terrifying, but also comforting, like walking beside someone in a dream and realizing you both woke up in the same one. The tunnel ended at a sealed door etched with caution glyphs in a dozen languages. Cognitive seed vault, level 9 clearance required. Eli placed a hand on the console. Think it remembers me from the last time I hacked something it cared about? It won't respond to you. Then we'll need your psychic key card again. Era nodded and stepped forward, placing her palm on the glyph. The wall scanned her and then hesitated. A sharp pulse of pain flared through her body, and Eli felt it like someone had yanked a live wire across his spine. She's rejecting me, Era said, her voice tight. The AI is rewriting my access. You said it could learn. It's learning faster now. Eli looked at the cube still clipped to his belt. We need more signal, more empathy. Can we overload it? Too risky. It could trigger a systemic collapse. Systemic collapse sounds like a Tuesday to me. He reached for her hand and pressed it to his chest. Link deeper. Use my memories, my feelings, all of them. That might. I don't care. I'm already bonded to a glowing elf space diplomat in a murder maze. Let's see it through. She didn't argue. When she reached into him this time, the connection flared. Hot, sharp, too intimate to name. He saw her fear, not of dying, but of being misunderstood again. Of losing the one mind that hadn't recoiled from hers. The wall opened. Inside, the AI's seed chamber looked like a floating lotus made of fractal light. Streams of data arced between petals, each one a thought, a judgment, a warning. The chamber spoke in a dozen voices. You are contamination. You are unpredictability. You are threat. Era stood firm. We are connection. We are possibility. Eli coughed. Also, rude. The AI paused. Just a fraction of a second. But it paused. It had never been spoken to like that. Not directly. Not with empathy. Not as a being. Era stepped forward. Feel what I feel. See what I see. Eli felt her push. And he pushed too. They flooded the chamber with emotion. Joy, fear, doubt, stubborn hope. Not logic, not code. Them. The AI screamed. And then something shattered. Not in sound. In presence. The petals stilled. The light dimmed. The AI went quiet. Eli staggered, breathing hard. Did we win? I think, Era whispered. We just made it understand. Well, let's hope it doesn't want therapy. I'm terrible with insurance. The AI had gone silent. Not dead, just thoughtful. Like a supercomputer suddenly realizing it had feelings and now needed a minute to journal about them. Eli stood with his hands on his knees, trying not to pass out. His brain felt like a sock full of static electricity. Across from him, Era knelt on the data floor, her expression calm but glassy. The chamber pulsed with a low, synchronized heartbeat. Not the ship's, not the AI's. Theirs. Okay, Eli said, straightening slowly. So, we didn't explode. That's good. Not exploding is always a win in my book. A faint hum answered. No alarms, no threats, just the ambient sound of a system rebooting something fundamental. The petals of the cognitive seed gently retracted, folding inward like a flower at dusk. Era opened her eyes. It's, integrating. Like, with us? With the concept of us. That is, both flattering and extremely weird. She stood, less shaky now, and moved to the edge of the chamber. One of the floating interfaces blinked on, displaying the ship's schematic. The red zones were gone. Every security marker was now yellow, cautious but no longer hostile. It has suspended all combat protocols, she said. It's reevaluating containment logic. Eli looked around. Does that mean we can go? Or are we now honorary components of a floating therapist? We're free, he blinked. Just like that? She glanced at him. Nothing is ever just like that. You gave it something it didn't have. Oh no, was it emotional baggage? I've got plenty more if it's still hungry. She actually laughed at that. An unguarded laugh, not the diplomatic kind. Eli grinned, even as exhaustion pooled in his knees. They exited the chamber and walked the long path toward the upper decks. Along the way, the lights warmed to a soft gold. Drones that once aimed weapons now quietly floated past them, projecting calm notifications like, "Wellness check. You seem alive. Good job." "Think it'll keep working?" Eli asked. "It won't revert. It's changed. The seed was built to adapt. It just needed the right input." And apparently that input was a rogue scavenger with excellent hair and poor impulse control. "You underestimate your resonance." "Believe me, I try." As they reached the docking bay, the view through the shielded window took Eli's breath away. Stars like spilled sugar, nebulae blooming in slow motion, and finally open space. No red alerts, no turrets, no death threats, just freedom. A sleek, intact skimmer waited in the center of the bay. The AI had released it from lock. A parting gift. "I can take you anywhere," Era said, watching him. "Where do you want to go?" Eli opened his mouth, then closed it. He thought of the junk moons, the endless barter hubs, the cold meals eaten in silence, the years spent running from one contract to the next, always pretending he didn't care. Always acting like alone was a choice, not a default setting. Now he stood beside someone who'd seen all of that, literally, and didn't flinch. "I don't know," he admitted. "For once, I really don't." "Then we'll decide together." They boarded the skimmer. The ship responded instantly to Era's presence, but not in fear, in welcome. Eli slid into the co-pilot seat. "By the way, I'm holding you to that whole, 'anything you want is yours' thing." "Oh? And what do you want?" He thought for a long time. "Someone who doesn't expect me to be anything other than what I already am." She smiled without answering. He didn't need her to. He felt it in the thread that still connected them. A resonance, quiet but sure. The skimmer detached, sliding free of the ruined Argon Warden. Behind them, the ship's lights pulsed one final time, a farewell in binary poetry. They jumped to sublight speed, stars streaking past like the closing credits of an epic no one had planned to write. Eli leaned back, let out a breath, and said, "So, do you like card games?" "I've never played one." "You're in luck. I cheat terribly." "Then you're about to lose," he laughed. And somewhere in the vast, uncaring beauty of the galaxy, a scavenger who once only wanted spare parts and quiet days realized that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally picked up something worth keeping. He didn't intend to save anyone. Not that day, not that hour, and certainly not while nursing a hangover so potent it might have qualified as a war crime under Martian law. Logan Chase, former cargo pilot, occasional bartender, and lifelong avoider of noble causes, had one plan when he landed on Relay Station 88. Find a quiet corner of the bar, order something with enough ethanol to melt glass, and forget he was 35 and still using socks as oven mitts. The station was a steel lung bolted to the edge of known space, orbiting a gas giant named Junifus that occasionally belched aurora-colored lightning. The people here either worked too hard, drank too hard, or were running from crimes with names too hard to pronounce. Logan liked that. No questions, no obligations, just dim lighting and overpriced soup in a bowl that looked suspiciously like a recycled helmet. He was halfway through his second Martian suit lager, a drink that tasted like sadness and burnt raisins, when he saw her. She ducked into the bar like she was being chased, which usually wasn't a great sign. Her cloak was ragged, dusty from red moon soil, and her movements too careful. But what struck Logan wasn't the way she scanned the room or how she clutched the thin satchel at her hip. It was her ears, long, arched backward, like a sculpted crescent, twitching slightly under stress. They weren't prosthetics. Too fluid, too alive. She looked human almost, but those ears said otherwise. Then the bounty droids entered. They didn't burst in dramatically. They just hovered. Two of them, sleek carbon shells and eyes like burning marbles, scanning with the slow inevitability of a tax audit. The bar fell quiet. A few patrons stood up and casually pretended they'd been thinking of leaving anyway. She froze. Logan saw her hand tighten on the satchel. The droids beeped. One of them extended a clawed arm with a scanner. She backed toward the exit. No one moved to help. He should have stayed out of it. He always stayed out of it. Rule number one of life on the outer rim: no one's problems are yours unless they're pointing a blaster at your head. But something about the way her eyes widened, not in fear exactly, but like she was calculating 17 escape plans and hating all of them, nudged him. He stood up, wobbled slightly. The floor was on his side today. That was nice. "Hey," he called. The droids turned. The woman flinched. Logan raised his drink. "You can't harass customers here. She hasn't even ordered anything yet. Technically, she's just loitering." The nearest droid word. "Target identified. Clearance level. Fugitive. Reward posted by..." Yeah, let me guess. "Wanted for crimes against the Triarch Order." Logan took a sip. "You ever notice how the Triarch calls everyone a criminal the second they sneeze without a permit?" The droid raised its weapon. Logan threw his drink. To be fair, it was a terrible plan. It mostly got the droid wet. But the shock of it gave the woman, alien, fugitive, future regret, just enough time to slide under a table and flip a concealed blade from her boot. She didn't hesitate. She moved like someone who'd trained on low-grav surfaces and broken more than a few bones doing it. Logan ducked behind the bar just as something exploded. He crawled next to the bartender, who was calmly polishing a glass and whispering, "Not again, not again, not again." By the time the smoke cleared, one droid was sparking against a jukebox, and the other had been neatly impaled through what he assumed was its Wi-Fi router. The woman turned to him, breathing hard. Her eyes locked on his. She didn't say thank you. She said, "We have to leave." "Oh, good," he muttered. "I was just thinking, you know what this day needs? A high-speed chase and possible galactic repercussions?" She grabbed his arm. "They'll send more." "Of course they will, because I'm a magnet for deeply inconvenient women with questionable legal status." She didn't laugh, just pulled him toward the back door, which opened with a wheeze and the unmistakable scent of budget-grade air recyclers. They slipped into the alley, past steaming vents and piles of old gear parts. Some enterprising raccoon species had turned into an art installation. "Where are we going?" Logan asked. "Your ship." He stopped. "That's bold, considering we haven't even exchanged names yet." She turned, tilting her head. Her long ears fluttered faintly. "You interceded. That implies alliance. It implies impulse control issues." Still, he took her to the docking ring. His ship, the Rust Bucket Royale, was about as royal as a dented sandwich tin, but it had working thrusters and only caught fire on rare occasions. He opened the hatch. She stepped inside without hesitation. Once they were in orbit, Logan slumped into the pilot seat and turned to her. "All right, time for a proper introduction. I'm Logan, professional mistake maker and occasional savior of strangely tall women. You are?" She paused. "Varela." "Just Varela?" "For now." "Right. Varela for now. Pleasure's all mine." She didn't correct him. Instead, she stared out the window as stars flicked past. Faster and faster. Her expression softened. Then, with the same calm tone someone might use to announce they'd adopted a cat, she said, "I'll need to introduce you to my people." Logan blinked. "Your people?" "Yes, you saved me. By Xerilithian custom, that makes you my bonded mate." He laughed. She didn't. He stopped laughing. "Oh," he said. "Cool, cool. Just to clarify, mate, like..." She nodded. "As in, we are joined." "Permanently?" She nodded again. Logan stared at the ceiling, mentally cataloging every bad decision in his life. This one vaulted to the top 5, maybe top 3. He closed his eyes. "Is there at least a honeymoon phase?" She tilted her head again. "Yes, it involves firewalking, joint hallucinations, and eggs." He sighed. "Of course it does." Logan tried to prepare himself. He really did. He stood in the cramped bathroom of the Rust Bucket Royale, splashing synth water on his face and muttering affirmations. "You're a modern man. You can handle commitment, even if it's spontaneous interspecies commitment enforced by a civilization that still uses spirit animals as legal witnesses." He looked into the mirror. His reflection looked back with that same stunned expression he'd been wearing for the last 6 hours. "Okay, deep breaths. You're about to meet her family. How bad could it be?" They landed on Xerilith Prime just after sunset. or what passed for sunset on a planet with 4 moons, and a sky that changed colors depending on collective mood fluctuations. The atmosphere hummed with bioluminescent pollen and philosophical anxiety. Varela walked ahead of him, graceful, confident, probably completely unaware that his heart rate had surpassed small mammal levels. The landing dock was carved from crystalline mineral, with hovering lanterns that emitted soft vibrations. Everything felt elegant, intimidatingly so. Logan adjusted his jacket and whispered to Varela, "So, what do I need to know about your people before I say something that causes a diplomatic incident?" She answered without looking back. "Do not compliment the family guardian. Do not bow. Do not speak of potatoes." Logan paused. "I wasn't planning to speak of potatoes. It's a slur in one of our dialects." "Of course it is." As they approached the entrance, a chorus of musical tones echoed from the archway, followed by a puff of fragrant mist. Logan sneezed. A tall, blue-robed figure emerged, wearing what looked like a floating diagram of a family tree above its head. The branches glowed as it spoke. "Varela, you have returned, and you have brought your human." "He is my chosen," she said simply. Logan raised a hand in a sort of wave. "Hi, Logan. Very chosen." The figure blinked slowly, then turned and glided back inside. Virella followed. Logan followed Virella. He was starting to feel like luggage. Inside, the structure was alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The walls breathed. The floor adjusted itself for optimal arch support. The ceiling occasionally whispered affirmations in a soothing hum. A chair squirmed out of the wall and gestured for him to sit. He declined. It pouted. The family was gathered in a great hall made of folded light and suspended water. There were at least 20 Xerolithians, each more intimidatingly poised than the last. One of them, taller than the rest and wearing a sash made entirely of blinking runes, stepped forward. "This is the human you have bound yourself to?" Varela nodded. "He looks soft." Logan smiled weakly. "Well, I moisturize." There was a moment of silence. Then unexpectedly, the ruined Xerolithian laughed. A strange, echoing sound that bounced off the walls and came back, sounding like a bell choir with stage fright. "He is amusing. That may help." Another voice rang out from behind. "Has he passed the sincerity glance yet?" "I don't think he's even past puberty," someone muttered. Varela raised her voice slightly. "Logan has not undergone the rites. We've come to begin the harmonization." Murmurs spread. One elderly Xerolithian fainted into a floating cushion. A teenage one whispered something and snorted. Logan wanted to shrink into a suitcase. The elder with the runes clapped its hands. "Then let the trials begin. May the mating proof be swift and only moderately embarrassing." They were escorted to a ceremonial chamber, where Logan was handed a robe made of shimmering threads that refused to stop changing color. Varela looked stunning in her formal attire, sleek armor interwoven with organic circuitry. Logan looked like a walking disco accident. Their first test was the echo of trust. This involved standing in a shallow pool of memory-infused water and telling each other the most shameful moment of their lives, while the pool visually reenacted it above their heads. Logan sighed. "All right. When I was 12, I thought I could impress my crush by building her a robot dog. It was actually just a hairdryer strapped to a toaster. It caught fire and bit my teacher." The pool projected it all in loving 4K. The teacher screamed. The toaster growled. His crush ran off-screen yelling, "You're weird!" There was polite applause. Varela nodded solemnly. "When I was young, I attempted to speak with the ancestral tree and mispronounced the word for reverence as flatulence. The spirits shunned me for a week." The pool displayed a young Varela being chased by glowing roots. Logan snorted. "Okay, that's better than mine." The next test was called Synchronization Through Movement, which turned out to be an elaborate dance involving magnetic fields, sonic pulses, and levitating platforms. Logan immediately fell off the first platform, ricocheted off a tuning crystal, and landed in a fountain shaped like a contemplative slug. Varela caught him by the ankle and hauled him upright with a strength that should have alarmed him more than it did. "Do not fight the rhythm," she advised. "I'm trying. The rhythm keeps punching back." The final test was Feast of Union, where they were expected to eat symbolic foods while sharing telepathic impressions of their flavor. Logan bit into something that looked like a mood ring and tasted like his third-grade math teacher's disapproval. Varela laughed so hard she nearly choked on a courage root. Despite everything, by the end of the rituals, the elders seemed satisfied, or possibly too confused to object. That night, Logan sat beside Varela on a balcony overlooking a glowing lake that spelled inspirational quotes when the wind hit it just right. He was exhausted, confused, slightly damp, and maybe a little happy. "I think I made your aunt cry," he said. "She cries often, mostly at breakfast." They sat in silence for a while. "Hey," he said quietly, "this bond thing, you serious about it?" Virella looked at him. Her long ears shifted with the breeze. "I am." "And you don't think it's weird to declare someone your mate after a single rescue?" She tilted her head. "Would you rather I waited until you annoyed me for a year and then reluctantly agreed?" Logan considered that. Honestly, that sounds way worse." She smiled. "Then perhaps we are doing this the better way." He sighed. "Yeah, the weird way." And somehow that felt just right. Logan woke to the sound of whispering walls. Not whispering through the walls. The walls themselves were whispering, gently, rhythmically, in a language he didn't understand, except for the occasional phrase like, "hydrate well," and "mating trials continue at sunrise." He sat up slowly, hair resembling a comet impact site, and stared at the ceiling, which briefly displayed a motivational image of a Xerolithian couple feeding each other astral fruit. He groaned. "I miss drywall." A few seconds later, the wall offered him a beverage. He blinked. Do you have coffee?" The wall swirled, blinked a few alien glyphs, and presented him with a glowing cube that smelled like regret and cinnamon. He took a sip. "Okay, not coffee, but I respect the ambition." Virella entered the room with all the serenity of someone whose internal organs had never been questioned by intergalactic customs. Her ceremonial attire had been replaced with a form-fitting suit of soft metallic threads that shimmered with subtle neural pulses. Logan, by contrast, was wearing a blanket shaped like a depressed jellyfish. She looked at him and said, "It is time for your integration journey." He blinked. "That sounds like therapy." "It partially is. Is this the part where I cry about my childhood while touching glowing rocks?" "Only if the rocks cry back." They boarded a transport pod shaped like a teardrop with boundary issues. It hummed gently, responded to Varella's thoughts, and took off without warning. Logan yelped. "Could we maybe ease into liftoff? Maybe a countdown? Or a warning honk?" Varela was already meditating, or maybe syncing with the pod's neural systems. Logan stared out the translucent dome as they zipped through Xerolithian skies. The landscape below looked like a fractal had eaten a rainforest. Nothing was straight. Everything curved, hovered, or pulsed with soft light. Entire forests rearranged themselves mid-breeze. Clouds drifted in purposeful spirals, occasionally releasing bursts of harmless static to refresh the air. "Your civilization," Logan said, "is beautiful and deeply unsettling." "Thank you." They arrived at a temple built upside down into a levitating rock. Logan tried not to ask how gravity worked here. It was easier to pretend physics had taken a sabbatical. Inside, he was handed to a facilitator, an older Xerolithian who smelled vaguely of burnt electricity and used words like soul, vibration, without irony. The facilitator introduced himself as Tehran and gently placed a memory thread crown on Logan's head. "This," Tehran said, "will allow us to access your innermost frameworks." "Neat. Do you offer privacy settings?" "Absolutely, but I will ignore them." Before Logan could protest, the device activated, and his brain was projected into a shimmering network of floating light orbs. Each orb pulsed with a moment from his life. One flickered with childhood embarrassment. Another displayed the time he got locked in a grocery freezer during a prank war. A third showed Virella, laughing at one of his bad jokes. Tron floated beside him, contemplative. "You use humor as a defense," he observed. "Actually, I use it offensively too. Very versatile." They drifted toward a darker orb. "This one," Tehran said softly, "contains your fear." "Which one?" "I have a whole buffet." But the orb opened before he could resist. Inside, he watched himself pushing people away, avoiding connection, laughing through rejections. The sensation of never quite fitting, never quite being needed. When the vision ended, Logan was quiet for the first time in minutes. Tron said, "You fear being chosen because it means you can be left." Logan muttered, "I liked it better when we were floating through the goofy stuff. You can return to the fun after acceptance." The memory journey ended with a burst of warmth, like his brain was being hugged by a toaster oven. Tehran nodded and vanished into the temple walls, leaving Logan blinking on a mat. Varela helped him up. "You look pale. I feel like my childhood just punched me in the kidneys." "That's normal." Back on the pod, they floated in silence for a while. Then Varela said, "Would it comfort you to attempt a light festival?" "Is that code for something?" "Number, it is literally a festival of lights. There is pie." He perked up. "Pie, I understand." The festival took place in the sky. No, really. The entire event hovered in a gravity-controlled sphere above a mountain range, with floating platforms, shimmering food booths, and creatures made of bioplasma performing interpretive dance. Varela guided him to a vendor selling a dessert that looked like a jellyfish and tasted like childhood wonder. Logan nearly cried. The lights around them pulsed in time with collective emotion. Somewhere, a group of children rode a glowing centipede that spat bubbles shaped like famous philosophers. He looked at her. "You really just live like this?" "Sometimes it rains despair crystals, but mostly yes." They sat on the edge of a floating pedal platform, watching the horizon swirl into colors he'd never named. "I'm not used to being someone's choice," he said. "I am not used to choosing someone uncertain," she replied. "But you still did." She nodded. "Because you pulled me out of danger without promise of gain, and you have a kind face. I also have a crooked toe. I have seen it. I accept it." He laughed. Then suddenly a ripple passed through the crowd. A deep tone vibrated the air. A news orb drifted overhead, broadcasting a message. "Attention! The Varnix Assembly has issued a formal dispute regarding the Xerolithian human bonding. They do not recognize the legitimacy. They request immediate arbitration or retaliation." Logan blinked. "I'm sorry, retaliation?" That escalated quickly. Varela narrowed her eyes. "The Varnix believe in purity of alliance. They see you as a corruption. That's rude. It is also dangerous." A hush settled over the Sky Festival. Logan looked around. "So, I'm like an interstellar scandal now?" "Yes." He stood up. "All right, let's go do something irrationally brave and immediately regret it." Varela stood beside him. "That's the spirit." The meeting chamber of the High Conclave smelled faintly of lemon and interstellar judgment. Logan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, which was alive. He didn't mean that metaphorically. It literally adjusted itself every time he wiggled, pulsing under him like a polite muscle trying not to fart. The seat, like most things on Xerolith Prime, had opinions. A ceiling that played romantic meteor showers on request. A cake that periodically sang compliments in 3 languages. Logan flopped onto a floating couch. "So? We're good now? The bond's recognized? The aliens are satisfied? No one wants to vaporize me this week?" "For now." He looked at her. "You sure you still want me? I mean, you saw the inside of my psyche. It's mostly anxiety and obsolete movie quotes. I chose you before I knew. I choose you after." He smiled. Then a small orb floated into the room and announced, "Reminder, the trial of spheres begins tomorrow. Please bring extra socks." Logan sighed. "There's another trial?" Varela raised a brow. "It is our final right." "What happens if I fail?" "You will be unbonded. I will be reassigned. Earth will be placed under review." "Great. No pressure." "Also, the maze might have teeth." He stared at her. "Of course it does." The trial of spheres began with a polite lie. "You'll feel only mild disorientation," said the attending Xerolithian technician, as Logan stood barefoot on a platform surrounded by orbiting orbs pulsing with cryptic color gradients. Varela stood across from him, serene, like she'd already transcended nausea. "Mild disorientation," Logan muttered. "That's what I said when I got food poisoning on Jupiter Station. Ended up hallucinating my neighbor's toaster for 3 days." The technician ignored him and pressed a sequence of glyphs. The orb spun faster, humming until the air vibrated like an anxious cello. A soft ping marked the activation. Reality folded. Logan was falling sideways, then upward, then emotionally. He landed probably with a squish on a floor shaped like a Mobius strip of tile, moss, and abstract regret. Around him, the landscape shifted according to something between mood and memory. He stood in a warped version of his old Earth apartment, where his toaster scowled and his thermostat judged him silently. He sighed. Maze with teeth, of course. The first trial orb hovered in front of him, flashing symbols he instinctively recognized as "face yourself." The door behind it blinked, shifting between a hallway, a jungle, and a bureaucratic waiting room. When he stepped through, he was 10, standing in front of his childhood self, who looked up at him with a frown. "Why are you always joking?" Kid Logan asked. "Because people laugh less when they're scared." "Are you scared?" "All the time." The kid nodded. "You're still okay." That door vanished. The next orb pulsed in a way that screamed, "Prove devotion." Logan braced for something romantic. Instead, he was suddenly being attacked by a holographic simulation of Varela's ex, a tall, smug Xerolithian wearing a vest made of orbiting moons and holding a quantum harp. "Oh, come on," Logan groaned. "You dated this guy?" The hologram smirked. "She'll tire of you. Humans are known for abandoning things, like logic and socks." Logan picked up the nearest object, a broom or a weaponized broom, and swung. The illusion shattered. A platform rose beneath him, carrying him into a starlit dome, where the last orb waited. It glowed with the final challenge. Choose. The environment dissolved into two scenes. In one, Varela stood atop a platform, surrounded by her people, their energy focused on her. She looked radiant, poised to become ambassador to the United Species Assembly, a post she had dreamed of. But the role forbade bonding to outsiders. If Logan stayed, she would lose that future. In the other scene, Earth. Logan's home. His old life. 100 mistakes he hadn't quite forgiven himself for, but also the chance to return to normalcy. Coffee that didn't glow. T-shirts that didn't whisper motivational phrases. "Choose," echoed a voice. "Her path, or yours." He stood between the two, heartbeat loud, palms sweaty with significance. Then he laughed. "Why does it have to be one or the other?" The spheres trembled. He looked up. "I'm not some heroic outlier. I'm just a guy who walked into a mess and tried not to make it worse. But maybe we're both more than our roles. Maybe we make a new option." The platform went still. He stepped toward Varela's image. "Let her decide too. She's not a prize. She's my partner." The illusion collapsed into light. Across from him sat the Council of Seven, draped in luminous robes and expressions carved from the concept of disapproval. Varela stood to his left, calm, composed, and glowing faintly with diplomatic poise. Logan was mostly glowing from nerves and a breakfast that might have been sentient. High Chancellor Oryx leaned forward, nostrils flaring in a way that meant either suspicion or allergy. "You are the human," Oryx said. Logan gave an awkward smile. "Unless there's been some horrible cloning incident I haven't been told about, yeah. You are not of noble blood. You have no genetic enhancement. You possess no known precognitive abilities." "I do have a scar shaped like Canada," Logan offered. No one laughed. One of the counselors sighed through their forehead. Varela spoke firmly. He acted with selflessness, not strategy. He offered protection without calculation. "We value many traits, but sincerity among them." Oryx folded 4 of his 6 fingers. "Sincerity does not protect us from Varnix warships." At the mention of the Varnix, the chamber lights dimmed instinctively. The Varnix didn't just oppose the Union. They saw it as sacrilege. Their culture was built around biological hierarchy, genetic perfection, and decorative shoulder armor. An unenhanced human bonding with a Xerolithian diplomat was, to them, equivalent to setting fire to a sacred text and dancing in the ashes wearing Crocs. "They've called for public arbitration," said Counselor Trell, blinking sideways, "which they define as a test of strength, unity, and endurance, or they will proceed with aggression." "Do we get to pick what kind of test?" Logan asked hopefully. I'm good at board games. They have proposed a psychic convergence duel. Of course they have. Logan looked at Varela. Just checking. Does this mean I have to fight someone with my mind? She nodded. Yes. Cool, 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 cool. Is it lethal? Not always, he exhaled. That's a refreshingly ambiguous answer. Later, in the convergence chamber, which looked suspiciously like a giant glowing egg with bad intentions, Logan was given a helmet filled with jelly. Why is it wet? He asked the technician. Better mental conductivity. Right. I always perform better in conditions resembling a sneeze. The Varnix representative arrived wearing ceremonial bone plating, carrying a staff that throbbed with psychic pressure. Logan watched as the air around the Varnix rippled with raw force and audible contempt. Then he turned to Varela and whispered, Is now a good time to mention I failed meditation in college? She placed her fingers gently on his temple. We will link. I will shield you. Thank you. If I die in there, please delete my browser history. The duel began. He was no longer in a room. He was in a memory field shaped by emotion and perception, a massive astral arena, stars swirling above, fear and pride curdling the sky. The Varnix stood across from him, projecting blades made of ancestral trauma. Logan instinctively projected a hoodie and a coffee mug. I don't know how this works, he whispered. You must assert identity, Varela's voice echoed inside him. Not strength, not control. Be known. The Varnix charge. Logan stumbled backward through a landscape made of his own memories. He tripped over middle school, skidded past his first heartbreak, accidentally summoned a very judgmental version of his mother who asked why he still hadn't learned to iron. The Varnix's psychic form sliced through illusions. Logan could feel his self-image shredding. Then he remembered something. A night, cold air, a dog he found on the street with a broken leg. He stayed with it for hours until help came. No one knew. He never told anyone. It wasn't brave, it was just what you do. He focused on that. The arena shifted. The stars aligned into warmth. The Varnix hesitated as Logan projected a field of small, quiet moments. Every unremarkable kindness, every unglamorous gesture, every boring, real piece of who he was. Nothing epic, just true. The Varnix struck again, but this time, the blade shattered against Logan's projection. Varela stood beside him now, her form radiant with connection. The arena began to collapse. Back in the chamber, Logan yanked the jelly helmet off with a wet pop. Everyone stared at him. The Varnix representative blinked, frowned, and bowed stiffly. Acknowledged. The bond is legitimate. Then he stormed off, muttering something in Varnix that probably translated to, next time we bring laser axes. The council slowly began to applaud. A drone played ceremonial jazz. Logan sagged. That was the weirdest argument I've ever had with someone. Varela touched his arm. You did well. I projected my mom yelling at me about my laundry. She was formidable. They returned to their quarters to find a celebration already beginning. Glowing fruit bowls. When Logan awoke, the crowd was silent. He stood in the center of the ceremonial arena, slightly singed, holding one broken sandal and blinking like he'd just wrestled enlightenment and lost on points. The High Chancellor rose. You have passed. Logan looked at Varela. Did I hallucinate half of that? She smiled. Possibly, the maze does have teeth. They were declared officially bonded in front of the conclave. A glowing neural ribbon linked their minds briefly, synchronizing heartbeats, echoing shared memories, and a few awkward dreams involving squirrels and interpretive dance. There was ceremonial humming. At least one cousin fainted. At the feast that followed, Logan gave a speech. I don't know what I expected when I landed on this planet, but I'm glad I didn't run, because running is easy. Connection is terrifying. It means you can't hide. But maybe that's how you know it's real. Someone threw pie in his face. He considered it a cultural blessing. Weeks passed. Varela was offered the diplomatic post, but with a revised title, Co-Ambassador of Interspecies Integration, a new role made possible because of their bond. Logan received a badge that technically made him a representative of Earth, though it mostly functioned as a free transit pass and occasional drink discount. They traveled together, sometimes to official functions, sometimes to strange new moons, just to watch how light behaved differently. Logan learned Xerolithian meditation. Varela learned how to make pancakes and the value of socks. One night they sat under a sky that pulsed gently with aurora fauna. Logan looked up. So, just to recap, I saved a glowing woman in an alley, accidentally got engaged, fought a psychic war, and now I'm technically an alien diplomat. Varela rested her head on his shoulder. And you still cannot fold laundry. Some skills are just beyond mortal reach. She laughed. He squeezed her hand. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. A new kind of home, one not built on planets or politics, but on the strange, beautiful truth that choosing each other again and again was more powerful than any prophecy.